Welcome to the Longmont Pastor Video Blog. It's great to have you with us once again. This is a ministry of Whitefields Community Church here in Longmont, Colorado, and I have here with me Pastor Nick Cady, who is the author of the blog and also the pastor of Whitefields Community Church. And this blog, if you've been with us now, you know that it's about cultural conversations and how the gospel can uniquely speak to those conversations and how the gospel can influence those conversations. And so that's we're going to be talking about. But today we're going to also be talking about interesting things like, did you know that there is more than one leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy? And we're also going to talk about why the tower is actually leaning. And actually, Pastor Nick came into my office the other day and he just threw out this factoid to me that, hey, did you know that the leaning Tower of Pisa actually leaned the other way? And then they went and made a correction, and they overcorrected, and now it's leaning completely the opposite way. And so my thought was, isn't that how sometimes we react to things in Christianity and in the way we think about theology and the way we react to fads and things that are happening in our world? And so today's topic is going to be the theological method and the leaning Tower of Pisa. And you're studying right now in your Master's of Theology, and so this idea really speaks to some of the things that you're dealing with in the things that you're studying.
Right. So I'm studying at London School of Theology. I'm getting my master's in integrated theology. And so part of that is that we are studying theological method. And if you could really think about what is theological method, I'd put it this way. Everybody who thinks about God, everybody who approaches the Bible does so methodologically. Just we do it with varying degrees of self-awareness, right? We're not always aware that we're using a method, but we all are. And so theological method is about examining the methods that we use or that other people have used to reach the conclusions that they come to, and then examining, is that the right method? Do I need to change my method? And so Leaning Tower of Pisa is a great example of this, because they wanted to build this amazing tower in Pisa, and they didn't take proper care to think about the foundation. And so what happened is they built this tower on this land that was soft, way too soft, especially for a tower that size, and they didn't put down the foundation deep enough or wide enough. And like you said, there is actually more than one leaning Tower of Pisa. There are several towers in Pisa, and several of them lean, and the reason is because of the soil in that area. Maybe it's not a good area for building towers, or if you're going to do it, make sure you take care of your foundation. So theological method is really about what is the foundation for how we do theology, how we come to theological conclusions, how do we think about God, how do we approach the Bible? And so it's generally accepted that there are 4 to 5 theological sources of theology. And theological method is about saying, okay, what priority do we need to give to certain of those sources over and against other sources? So as Christians, evangelical believers, we believe that Scripture should be our primary source of theology. So like, for example, the saying sola scriptura, it's a bit misleading because it insinuates that Scripture is our only source of theology. Well, that's not exactly true, but it is definitely our primary source of theology. And so, other sources of theology are tradition, more in the sense of traditional interpretations. We have the creeds and the councils and these things that happened in the past. We have the way that we got our Bible to begin with. It went through a process which included some degree of tradition, oral tradition about Jesus before it was written down. Then you have reason, that God has given us an ability to reason and understand, and if He's given us His Word and He's also given us the ability to understand it, that speaks of reason. We've also got experience, the things that we experience, do they correlate with Scripture? And when maybe we have an experience and we say, well, I had an experience and it seems to contradict what the Bible's saying, then do we change the way we think about the Bible, or do we change the way we think about our experience? That's a very important question. And another one is community. So the time and place that we live in, the time and place that the Bible was written in, how does that affect the way that we think about the Bible and the way we think about God? And so the way that you give priority to some of those sources of theology over and against other ones builds a foundation for how you approach the Bible, how you think about God, and that will inevitably be your foundation. And so if your foundation is off, then you end up with a situation like they did in Pisa, where you have this beautiful tower that is about to fall over because it is built on a bad foundation and the whole thing is a faulty project. It's doomed. And so in their case, what they did, and like you said, what people have to do in those cases where they build something on a bad foundation is you go in and then you overcorrect sometimes to the point where you go in the opposite direction. And Martin Luther had this saying. He said that many of us the way that we think about things or culture or whatever, we're like a drunk man riding a horse who, falling off the one side, gets on determined not to fall off that one side again and promptly falls off the other side. And so sometimes we can do that same thing. We overcorrect, the pendulum swings in the opposite direction, we go to the other extreme, and then we end up just as skewed, just in a different direction.
How do you think we can avoid making that pendulum swing back and forth?
I think you avoid it by examining your foundation for doing theology, making sure that Scripture is your primary source of theology, but also putting those other things in the right order. So for example, if you say that experience, maybe in theory you would say Scripture's primary for me, but in practice you examine yourself, you say, well, if I'm really honest, in this particular case, I'm saying that experience is really what's driving the way that I think about this or that topic. The way that you need to do that is go back to your foundation and say, I might be doing that, but it's not the right way to be doing it. I should be putting Scripture in the first place and examining my experiences, basing my reason, all of these things on Scripture.
So the lesson would be that we should always be looking at life through the lens of the Scripture and always kind of bringing everything back to the Bible.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I would say that for us, the lesson to take away is, and maybe for you, is to figure out, is there somewhere in my Christian life where the pendulum is swinging to one extreme or to the other, and how can I bring that to a place where it's submitted to the Scriptures? And I think that's just a valuable takeaway that we can take away from this podcast today. And we appreciate you being with us today. And definitely subscribe, like, share, get to our YouTube channel, give comments, and let us know. What do you think some of the things today in the modern church are pendulums that are swinging to the extreme, to the right or to the left? And let us know, and maybe we'll make a podcast about that at some point and discuss some of those topics. But it's great having you with us. Subscribe, nickcady.org, and we'll see you next time. God bless.